have as our guest speaker. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Earth Engine User Meetup. We are really excited to have today as our guest speaker Samapriya Roy, who is the creator of the Google Earth Engine Community Catalog. And today he'll be sharing us a behind-the-scenes look at what it's like to maintain, add new data, and basically how the community catalog is run. So his talk is entitled Building Google Earth Engine Community Catalog and Community Data Commons. And I'll be really excited to introduce him and share with you this session today. All right, so I'm going to share my screen here in a few slides to introduce the Earth Engine User Meetup. So this meetup is run for users, by users. We are a free and open meetup, and we welcome any community member who uses Earth Engine for their work or research to share about what they do. And we run this usually every month, and we welcome you, if you're interested to be a speaker, get in touch with us, send us an email or a message, and we'll be happy to put you in the queue. So if you want to get more information about the next meetups, feel free to sign up for our monthly newsletter, which is together with the ThriveGeo newsletter. And we also have recordings of past meetups on YouTube. So if you check out this handle at Earth Engine User Meetup, you will be able to see our channel, and all the past meetups are recorded there. We are actually going to be on a summer break in July and August. And in September, we'll be coming back with an interesting limited series featuring our first speaker, which is the Cloud Native Geospatial Foundation. So this limited series is all about taking a look at how Earth Engine sits within the Cloud Native Geospatial landscape. I'm sure many of you are aware that Earth Engine is in many ways a pioneer of Cloud Native Geospatial analysis. And it's just been such a groundbreaking tool, which has enabled so many people to access really huge amounts of data and amazing amounts of computation power, and be able to do analyses which in the past were extremely difficult to do, and if you had to download data, for example. So starting in September, we will be having this limited speaker series, and we hope that you'll join in to learn also about what else is happening in the wider cloud native geospatial landscape. So yeah, stay tuned and we'll share more information soon. So once again, please welcome to the stage our guest speaker, Dr. Samapriya Roy. So Sam is the creator of the Google Earth Engine Community Catalog. He's also a senior product manager at MAXAR and a Google developer expert. Sam also is a geospatial consultant and a speaker, and you might have seen him speaking recently at SAT Summit in Washington, DC. So I will stop sharing now and invite Sam to take over the screen. Thank you, Sam, for joining us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Just so everyone knows, I do have some slides and I'm on a wider screen. So if people can't see anything, just ping and let Sabrina know, and that way we can at least make sure that I'm zoomed in to the appropriate amount so you can see my code or you can see the screen as needed. The other thing is, even though I have slides, I don't really mind taking questions in between, so don't worry about breaking the flow. Just feel free to ask questions whenever you need to. Again, Sabrina's going to help me kind of get to those questions, so I'm really hoping to this to be more interactive than to be just a classic presentation in that same sense. So thanks again for coming. I did work on some slides because I've been told that slides will be more interesting, at least to give you a background on what the community catalog is and what the data commons concept was, right? Data commons isn't really a new idea. In fact, the idea of commons has been established for quite a while. There have been papers and written on it. In fact, Eleanor Ostrom, who wrote basically on this idea that how commons can still thrive, and not everything has to end with the tragedy of commons concept that used to be this outdated idea that existed for a while, right? So the idea of data commons is based on Ostrom's idea of like, hey, can we create these commons that are self-sustaining, that is created by the people, and that has a feedback loop of sorts that goes back and creates something with the community. So that's what data commons is all about. And the Earth Engine Community Catalog is effectively an example of a data common. It's not the only data common, obviously, but it's an example of what a data common should be. So first things out of the door, and I am not funded in any way by Google. I say this because I want people to know that the Community Catalog is an unfunded open source project. It's with a mission to basically say like, hey, as a community, what are the data sets that are most important to you? And how can we collect those, and how can we make them more and more accessible to people? And this is one of those places where the Community Catalog wanted to go a step further, right? There's a lot of companies out there, a lot of good establishments out there that really want to host your data and make it available. You have examples like the AWS Data Registry. You have examples like Source Co-op and a few other places that are doing this really, really well. When the Community Catalog was initially started, we wanted to go a little bit more than just access. We wanted to go into accessibility mode, where we said that it's not just enough sometimes for us to make this data available in a cloud storage bucket, because most people might still not have the compute. And what Earth Engine really enabled us to do was to basically say that I'm going to give you the data as well as the compute that is necessary for you to do an analysis on top of that data. So that is how it differentiates itself in terms of the people it's serving and the community it's actually trying to serve. Again, the catalog lives and serves alongside the Google Earth Engine data catalog and houses data sets that are often requested by the community. So the idea is to build for you, or people like you. One of the other interesting
Sam,
things.
we don't see your screen at the moment. Could you share your slides, please?
My bad. Sorry. I thought for some reason that it started to share. I clicked on it and I didn't click on the share yet.
No worries.
Can people see my screen again?
Yeah, looks great.
Okay. So anyways, this is the first slide, but I already spoke about this unfunded project again. Some of the features of the Community Catalog, and I'm going to click on the hide button so that you all can see without the box. Some of the features of the Community Catalog include the fact that you can search and use data sets. The idea was to be as closely related and mimicking as much as possible of the core functionalities of the main catalog. So you can search and use the data sets using tags, the same way in which you can use tags right now with the main catalog. You can use tags with the Community Catalog as well. They are organized by categories, and all of this will be clear when I actually head over to the catalog and I start doing a live demo of the catalog itself. You can find data sets using keywords as well. There is ways for you to actually search by keywords and also use this programmatically if you wanted to look for the data programmatically. We do have an internal version of a stack, and this is one of those things that is in active development. The reason it used to be external for a while, but we realized that it wasn't really complete without the vector data sets. So we kind of took it internal only while we are trying to fix those pieces. And again, I keep saying we, but it's just me. So it takes a little bit of time to actually get this done right now. And then we also have the example code repository, which was designed to give people the same look and feel that we have right now of data sets that are in the main catalog. So you also have a repository that gives you that same look and feel. There are data sets by multiple categories. I actually feel like there is more categories now than the ones that exist right here, because we didn't have fire when I first created this slide. Now there's an entire category just for fire, for example. I ran this yesterday. This is the stats in terms of how much data is in the Community Catalog. It's about 374.22 terabytes. And this includes, by the way, like additional things like the images and the image collection counts and things like that. So you can look at that and decide for yourself, like, hey, it's actually growing. And we fundamentally started with just one, data set, right? Okay, so as far as the catalog impact, this is a hard thing to do. I've been often asked, like, how many people actually access your data sets? And this is hard to do because there's no way in Earth Engine to know how many users access the overall catalog. What I can say is total number of users and how many users actually reach the catalog website itself. We get about 500,000 visits every month. We get users from about 160 plus countries. And this is just an annual catalog visit kind of a thing. I should have updated this one, but you get the idea that there's people visiting for almost every single country in the world. I am going to go into how to contribute to the community catalog with the notion that I'm going to show you how to do that when I move over to the catalog itself. But right now, the catalog is designed so you can do a couple of things, such as bringing your own data sets. So this is for people who are authors and who basically want to say, like, hey, I'm a research lab, I'm producing this product, or I'm someone who basically works with the community. We have this product we really want to highlight in Earth Engine, and we want to bring it to the community catalog. That's when you are basically saying, like, hey, bring your own data set. So you have created and published a data set that you'll like me to host in the community catalog. When I'm talking about suggesting a data set, you can also be someone who are using some data set in your domain. I am a hydrologist by training with a background in remote sensing and geospatial applications, which means that I know certain things about those things, but I'm not an expert in all other domains, right? So I'm reliant on the community to often tell me, hey, this is a great paper in forestry, and this new data set is really going to be an important one. Can you make this available to the community catalog? And I will often get requests like that, which is always good to know, The next one is updating a data set. You can always ask me to update a data set, which happens when something is like something has been outdated or there's a new version that's available. I often get requests like that. It takes a little bit of time. Again, like it's a one-person team, so it takes a little bit of time to actually get to those. But people will often send me an update request as well. And last two are, you can either submit a bug report where you see something and you can directly submit it as a pull request, or you can make a bug report and say, like, hey, this image, for example, isn't available. Maybe the permissions aren't configured correctly or things like that. So it goes into that category as well, where we wanted to report, like we wanted you to report on bugs as well, and also contribute code examples. Okay, so at this point, I can go through the slides, but what I really feel I should do is I should switch over to the catalog, and I'm going to walk through those. I'm going to come back to the slides because what I want to show is how exactly does a community catalog get these tickets, right? And how exactly do I interact with the data sets and make it available to you towards a finished product, So, okay. With that in mind, let's go to the community catalog. So if people wanted to, they can use the QR code if you want to, but you can also just look for GE community catalog and you should be able to just Google it if you want to. Okay. I'm going to assume that you can still see my screen. Does this page look okay to everyone? I'm hoping that it's fine.
Yeah, looks good.
Okay, cool. So this is the community catalog. And the idea of the community catalog, like I said, it's designed to follow and take examples from some of the main core features of the main catalog, right? So the first thing first is the landing page. It just tells you what the community catalog is. I also have a blog that kind of discusses some of these data sets. I just started it this year. It's an experiment I'm trying to do. It's basically allowing you to also go deep dive on some of these data sets. So if you wanted to join that, feel free to sign up. It doesn't really cost anything. And then the other thing that I always tell people to do is check out the first article on like how it all started. And we have a citation. This is an important one because the catalog itself can be cited. And what it allows us to do is to gain visibility in the overall community. And also the more it's used in research articles, it's nicer to have the citation included. As much as we love the acknowledgements, a citation allows us to have traceability across scientific papers. Okay. So like I said, on the left-hand side, there'll be a couple of sections that'll seem like, the usual ones, like this license and code of conduct and insiders program and getting started. Getting started is where I would start with, like literally navigating the catalog. This is where you go in, and it'll give you some examples of how you can navigate the catalog, including the fact that you can go to the subsections, click on it, and you'll get information on that. And you can also search by dataset name or keywords in the tag. So for example, if I just look for the word fire, it'll bring up a few datasets that have the word fire, or fire has been mentioned at least a few times in there. And that's what you can do right now. You can also use GEAD, which is also a tool that I built. So GEAD and GEUp are tools that I built. And in the past, I've been building tools for Earth Engine for a while now. You can also search using both the main catalog and the community catalog by using keywords. You can basically just use the word keywords fire and then use -- source and then use community. And what it'll do is it'll pull from the community catalog and it'll display that on your command line, so whatever you're trying to do there. So you can use from there. The next thing is the G examples repo. Like I said, I wanted there to be an examples repository similar to how Earth Engine currently has an examples repository. So if I go into Earth Engine right now, you see that there is an examples repo. I'm going to just zoom in a little bit on this one. You'll notice here that this is Earth Engine's version of like, hey, data sets, right? And almost every single data set has, that is in Earth Engine, has an example right now. So you can go in and explore these if you wanted to. What I've done is effectively tried to create something similar. In my case, you'll see that it's in the writers section because I can actually write to it. But in your case, it should be under a reader section, and you can access this repository by going to this page and just clicking on the link to add example repo to your readers list. And it should just appear with all of these sections ready to go. So you'll have agricultural, vegetation, forestry, and you'll have the data sets within it. Similarly to like, fire monitoring data sets. And so you have the global fire atlas, for example, and I can just click run and it should just work out of the box, or one would hope it'll work out of the box. And let's see. I feel like every time you're doing an import of a module, it always takes a little more longer to load. But anyways, it's also a large data set. But this is a good example of like, hey, you can just go in and you can just click on an example and the example will just run at that location. So you don't have to really do much in terms of getting started. I always recommend people to first read what the data set is rather than just using the example repo, because a lot of these data sets, they're not standard sensors, right? If you think about the key differences between the main catalog and the catalog that is the community catalog, is community catalog has been generated on top of existing research work. They're mostly peer-reviewed work, but they're not really like Landsat or MODIS or Sentinel or things like that. So there's not a lot that you might already know about it. So it's really useful for you to go explore that first and then go to the example rather than the other way around. And by the way, all of these data sets, right? So if I go into, for example, global land use and land cover is a good example. I just updated the Esri 10-meter annual land cover data set. So you'll notice here that when you click on these sections in the left-hand side, there's the population and socioeconomic, geophysical, elevation, and so on. So you can click on that to expand it. And you go to the Esri 10-meter land use land cover for as an example. You'll notice that it does have a citation. Most of the data sets, in fact, this is one of those key requirements that I wanted to include, was that we wanted to include data sets that have been peer reviewed to some degree, because I didn't want to just be an open place for people to just dump data and be done with it. It had to meet some levels of expectations of quality, and we wanted people to at least be able to cite it, so you get the citations back. It's something like setting up a stage for you to look at, So In this case, what was interesting was, yeah, so there is the citation information that's here. You have the class definition. So you get all this additional information about the data set that you may not get directly from the example itself. And then you have an Earth Engine snippet. A snippet usually just contains the path to the data set, but the sample code is from the examples repo. And if I click on this and click on open in new tab, it should load exact same code that's in the examples repo. And if I hit run right now, you'll notice that it basically adds this into the code editor. Some of you had mentioned in the past that Earth Engine had this very interesting thing where for some reason, even though a few of you added the click or like add the examples repo to your repository, it wouldn't show up. So usually I would tell people to refresh that page or to do a forced refresh on that page. And sometimes it does show up. But since, I believe since last release, what I did was you can actually go into the community catalog right now. It's backed by a GitHub repository. I don't know if people realize this, but on the right-hand side, there's this tiny little icon. It's a Git icon, and you just click on that awesome G community catalog. And if you click on it, it'll basically take you to the GitHub page from where the whole website is served, where all of the data sets and manifests and all of those things actually stay. It now has an examples folder. And the examples folder has the JavaScript file to all of those examples that I was just showing. The idea is for those people who can't get to the code via adding that repository for some bizarre reason, you can now just go in and you can basically get, and I'm just going to do the same land use land cover. So let's just do global land use land cover. And I can just do Esri 10 meter, Esri LULC 2020. This was the 2021. I can just click on copy raw file, or I can just click on raw, copy this file, go into a new Earth Engine window, code editor window, and paste that and hit run. And theoretically, it should work the same way. This is, again, just to make sure that people do have access to it. If you can't get to it through the main, like by adding the repo, then you can at least get to it by this methodology. Okay. In terms of being able to utilize this, there is other restrictions. This is not really a restriction. It's more like I want people to be aware of the fact that all data sets need to have attributions or licensing that's available to them. This is one of the core fundamentals of the community catalog. I couldn't include data sets that don't have distribution rights or that are restrictive in some sense, that basically say that, no, you cannot host it in a different location. There are data sets like that some people produce that are extremely restrictive, that don't allow, for example, any kind of sharing or rehosting or anything like that. And that's one of those areas where I don't go in and try to take that data set. So I always have to read more and more about the licensing structure. And this is where it gets tricky, because sometimes people will submit data sets that don't have any kind of licenses that are mentioned anywhere. And interestingly enough, the non-existence or the non-obvious nature of a license does not make it open source to begin with. I cannot stress this enough, because a lot of the times I get asked this questions and I was like, well, if the license doesn't exist, but it's on an open website, I was like, no, it doesn't really work that way. I still have to maintain and respect the license that's included with. And each of these data sets, right, if you go into the World Settlement Footprint, for example, each of these data sets will have license information. License is key, because we want to make sure that the catalog maintains these for every single data set that comes in. Okay, any questions till now on just the catalog? I'm going to go to how it's actually all made, is the next step. Okay. So going back to the catalog itself, let's go back to the GitHub repo. Like I said, most of most of whatever happens with the community catalog happens within the GitHub repository. GitHub repository is how I get data requests from users. So if you are a user and you want to submit a data set, right, you simply go to the GitHub repository, you click on issues, and you click on new issue. When you click on the new issue, you should get all of these templates that are listed. So you can basically, someone can say like, hey, I want to suggest an example for an existing data set, or I want to submit like a new community data for the catalog, or have a bug report or update, or bring your own data. So let's say I want to bring my own data. I just wrote a paper. I really want to share this data with the whole world in Earth Engine. So I click on Get Started. When you click on Get Started, a template opens up, and it kind of tells you the fields that I need. So for example, I can say global, I don't know, flood elevation risk assessment map. By the way, I'm totally making this up. Okay. You can give your example, you can give your email. It's not a necessity. You can basically just do without the email as well. But an email is nice if I wanted to get back in touch with you, apart from interacting with you over the ticket. Sometimes, there might be something that I want to ask specific about the data set that you may not want to share directly in a GitHub ticket. Next is the dataset description. Markdown is supported, which is literally a way of saying like you can write here completely in Markdown or in just normal, simple text, whatever you want to say. This is a new data set to do assessment of global flood risk model. This is the test. And again, like I'm just creating this just for the time being, right? In extremely rare cases, and I've been lucky enough that it has happened a few times, in extremely rare cases, it is possible that you already have this data in Google Earth Engine. And if you have this data already in Google Earth Engine, please just share your Earth Engine collection or your path, and we'll just include those. And you can also include things like, hey, I have this data set, but maybe you don't want to continue keeping this in your bucket because it's taking up a lot of storage space and you really want to get rid of it, or you want someone else to kind of host it. If you want the catalog to host it, happy to actually host it. So that happens as well too. Next is the license information. This is where it gets tricky because I would this is one of those things that is required, but some of the times I will not get any information on the license, and it makes it really tricky for me because I have to then go and track this paper and basically check what the license type is. I still have to read the license, by the way. Every time someone says that this is a specific license, I still have to go and verify that that is the same license that people actually have released the data set in. As an example, let's say that you put your data set on Zenodo and it's under a CC by 4.0 license. I can just go to CC by 4.0. And just as an example, if I go to Zenodo right now, right, zenodo.org, let's say that I do, so I just recently updated the GHAP data set, which is the big seamless data set. So on PM 2.5, you will notice here that when you click on this, and I'm just giving an example of Zenodo because I use Zenodo quite a bit, but I get data requests from everywhere, from Zenodo, Figshare. I've even pulled data from FTP servers sitting somewhere remote. But you'll notice here, it says here, Creative Commons Attribution 4.0 International. So you can just copy this text over, and you can basically go back to the issue, paste it here, and say, okay, I know that this is this license. Keywords might be flooding and sensing application, and I'm going to ingest to follow the project's code of conduct. You can read the code of conduct here. The code of conduct is it's a good read if you wanted to read it. And then I click on I agree, and then submit new issue. And that's it. That's how you submit your dataset request. It's as simple as that. And you'll notice here the issue numbers went up, and now on the very top it says Global Flood Risk Assessment Map. And if I click on it, this is how the ticket looks to me. And it has been assigned to me already. It has a label that says BYOD because I use that template, which means someone is bringing their own data set, which is great. I can ask a follow-up question as like, can you share the download link, for example? So sometimes I will interact with the authors of like, hey, can you share, like sometimes it's not as obvious on where the data set actually is. And I was like, can you share the download link? Thank you, and click on comment. So that person will get a response back. In this case, of course, like I'm responding back to myself, so I'm not really going to do anything here, but you get the idea that this is one of those ways in which users can bring in data. The same applies to all the other templates. So again, you can bring your own data, but you don't have to bring your own data. You might be just someone who is using additional data sets from multiple locations and from multiple domains, and you just want to bring a few of those into the community catalog because you think it's useful to the community catalog or to the community at large. That's what the data commons is all about. That's how you do that. Okay, so going back to the tickets again, I'm going to go into the discussions of the tickets again. And there are some data sets in the community catalog that are at almost like a cadence of sorts. The last release that we did, the last week actually, not this week, but last week, I added, for example, the year 2023 to 3 different data sets. One was the Global Forest Watch, the Esri land use land cover data set, and the USDA generated crop sequence boundaries layers, which is like a field boundary layer for the United States based on crop types. And all of that, those had updates. So how do I exactly know when there are updates, right? It's simple. Usually someone is going to tell me about it. And by tell me about it, I mean, they're either going to create a ticket if they're really nice and they like the catalog and they want to help me out, they will create a ticket. The other way is they'll just ping me on LinkedIn or they'll ping me on Twitter or somehow, and they'll send me an email saying like, hey, we just updated it to this version. Can you update the data set to this? While I appreciate that, it still require me to do the additional work. And sometimes that does not make it as a ticket, which means I can't prioritize it in the list of, like all of the other requests that we have gotten over a period of time. And you will notice that there's quite a few that are open, and there's over 200 tickets that have closed, So there's 33 open tickets right now for requesting data sets from all over. And some, some of them are like fairly recent. Like this was made 2 days ago by Ujjwal. You all know Ujjwal, Spatial Thoughts. He found this Weir's nighttime light data set, and he basically added in the download link. He added in the description and what needs to happen. Most of the times, this is good enough if there's a license included. I know for a fact that Zenodo requires you to have license information, so I can do that. And there's a nice little paper to go along with it. He included his email about it. So this is an example where it's bare minima, but I still have enough information to actually work on this ticket as needed. Yeah, so the cadence data set, like I was saying, like those are the ways in which I do that. There are some data sets that I know will be released in specific cadences. For example, the United States Drought Monitor data set is released every Thursday. So a copy of that was released yesterday. And I'm just going to show an example of, I've written scripts. So at this point, I believe that things that you don't see is I have to write a lot of automation script to go fetch the data, process the data, clean the data, because most of the times the data sets can be, they're rarely the way in which you want them to be in Earth Engine. Let me put it that way. Most of the times I have to go download them. I've either had to stitch them together, or I have to add some additional metadata to it, or I have to basically think of the most logical way in which I can actually put this into Earth Engine. I usually will write about data preprocessing if I have modified the data in any way. For example, if you give me a netcdf file and I'm going to convert it to a geotiff, I'm going to write a little bit of note about the fact that, hey, we used code to convert this to a geotiff. This is the projection we used, and so on. Those kind of things will happen. But in this case, I'm going to just run this program. What it'll do is it's actually going to this website and fetching the United States Drought Monitor data from the 11th, which was Tuesday. So the work stops on the 11th, and the data set is actually released on the 14th. So you'll notice that the ingestion process has now started. I get a task ID, and everything is running okay. So this is also the way I'm showing you this manually because I wanted to, but in reality, this is usually run as a cron job. So I don't actually have to be in front of a computer to do this. This is just run at a fixed cadence every Thursday at a specific time. This will just run and it'll ingest that to that collection, as needed. So there's a few like that I have. So for example, the high resolution settlement layer that used to be generated by Facebook was under a similar thing, that where I would basically have code that'll go in and fetch that whenever there was an update necessary. And something similar was the Ookla broadband data set that's also under an automated code that I can go and fetch. So there's about 50 to 60,000 lines of code that I've written till now that basically goes and interacts with hundreds of these data sets to do these kinds of manipulations. And the nice thing is I now have connectors into some of these systems like Zenodo, where I can basically say like, hey, go check if there's a new version available compared to the older version that was released. And some data sets will have version numbers. And that really helps me out as well. So versioning is key when I'm looking at an example of like when I'm moving the data or things like that. Okay, I'm going to let this run because it's going to take another 8 minutes and 22 seconds. And we can come back to this just to show you that it actually ran. But going back, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take examples from some tickets. And the reason I wanted to do this was because I thought it would be interesting for people to understand how I basically move about, how I move about actually getting a ticket to processing it. And I'm just going to go, copy that link. And I'm just going to go here. Let's paste that. So this is an example that I created, which came as a note from the SAT Summit when I met Steve, and Steve was like, hey, we released the 2023 update. Can you go and update this? So I got on a chat with Gabriella, who works at Impact Observatory. I had a chat with her. I tagged her on this. We emailed each other in terms of like, hey, what was the old thing and what's happening in terms of like the new data sets that are available for 2023. Here's the issue. The data set isn't really available all the time as, as an open repo or a place where you can just download the TIFF file. So what I did have to do was find the source, for example, and it turns out that they have an API. And again, I'm going to zoom in a little bit because I don't know if you can actually see that. They have an API where you can go in, and this is a stack representation of the data. I can go in, I have all the classes, I have the geometry, I have the collection name, properties, blah, blah, blah. But most of the times what you're really interested in is getting to the TIFF file. And those are usually in the href. You will notice here that there's an assets, and then you have an href with a .tiff. And this is hosted on Amazon, and I had to go download this. So think of it this way. There are 5,000 something plus tiles for this land cover data set. The only way for me to process this, because I can't ingest a stack directly into Earth Engine. Earth Engine has no mechanism to read a stack. And even if it did, it would still have to download all of these data sets. So I have to download all of these data sets. I have to then package it and make sure that it's added to a collection. And here's where it gets really tricky. Because I know that they introduced a new type of processing algorithm, and they went back in time and processed all of their earlier data sets as well from 2017. So this is V3 of the data set. I know for a fact that I can't just upload and the 2023 piece. I have to actually go in and adjust or delete or override all of the older data sets as well, just to give you the level of complexity, right? But here's the other catch. The file name structures have changed. The last time they released it, it started with start date, end date, and then a tile gridding number, the same way in which you have right now. So 6TV underscore 2023-0101 to 2024-0101. That's how they did the file naming. So now I can't just overwrite in place in Earth Engine. So what I actually have to do is to create a replicate copy of this collection. I have to download all of these files first, and then upload it to Google Cloud Storage Bucket, where I host this data set for a while. And then I will basically write some code that goes and reads the data from the Google Cloud Storage Bucket, and will start ingesting them into Earth Engine into a separate collection. Then I will do something known as an in-place deletion and creation object, which means that I will go in and I will start deleting the objects from the main collection while I'm replacing them with things from the new collection. This is the level of detail that you don't necessarily see, but it actually goes in, because imagine this, right? And I have to go this, and I have to basically, this will save me a TIFF file. And this is for a single, this is like, this page is only loading me 10. So I have to go and paginate this across. Obviously, I can add a limit. I can increase the limit to more, so I can get like list of all of these items if I wanted to. But you get the picture, right? That not all data set requests that come to me are in a direct way where I can just say like, oh, Sam is just going in and clicking upload, and that's how that works. It doesn't. I wish it did. Another one, is missing license. I love this example because, and again, this is not a criticism of the user itself. This is like, people really want to add data sets, and I really appreciate when people bring their data sets, So, or people suggest some data sets that needs to be added, because how else am I going to learn about other data sets that exist that I don't know anything about? For example, I didn't work with PM 2.5. But what could be really interesting is someone else who might be working with it. So this is an example where someone created a ticket, they submitted it, they have the reference information. And that's really nice. They do have the reference information, and I can go and read this if I wanted to. The nice thing is also that it is open source. Once in a while, I'll also get into a scenario where people will share this with me, but I can't really get to the paper, so I can't actually read the paper or understand what the paper is trying to do. This one is open source, so I can actually go into the results and discussion pieces, and I can try to see if somewhere they have like data sets can be found here. They do have that. You will notice here, this was when it was released. It was are freely available as a public good, freely available as a public good, even though it's technically a licensed sounding word or sentence, it's not technically a license. So we always go, when in doubt, always contact the authors. So I emailed the authors yesterday on this ticket to make sure that they now have a version called version 6, GL.2. I emailed them, and I'm trying to ascertain that, hey, it is indeed under an open license and we can actually utilize it. Again, this is not a fault of the people who are trying to submit these datasets requests, but in the absence of one, right, they basically just left this as is. They just said enter license information. They didn't add this text. In the absence of a license text, this also falls on me to go in and read the paper, find those, email the people sometimes. Though I did add yesterday, as like seems V6 just went out to and with an updated paper going to update this data request to that version. So once in a while, it'll also happen that while I'm processing this, there's a newer version available. So I'm going to reach out to these people as well. Again, it's not a problem, but in some rare cases, there is no license information. And without licensing, it's really hard to do things, and just to show people on how these data sets can sometimes be distributed. This is a good example because people will get an idea that it's also not easy to sometimes download this. This is the latest version, V6 GL02, right? The data set is actually available. And you can notice here that the data set is actually available is, I don't know if people have used Box. So the data set is available in a Box share, which is similar to your Google Drive or anything else. And then you have to click on these, and then you have to basically download all of these. And each of these are like, they're not small, but if you think about the fact that they're like a gigabyte each, and let's say that you have 300 of these, this overall can reach about 400 gigabytes, which means you can't really go and say download all because your browser won't really support downloading all of this. So these are all strategies that I have to think about and parse and write ways and methods to actually do this piece as well. And again, going back, this is the catalog that you don't see, and I'm going to show you a catalog. Let's see.
Sam, so we're really enjoying this deep dive and behind the scenes look.
Yeah.
I'm aware that we have about 15 minutes left and there are a couple of questions.
Yeah. Let's do
Is it
the
okay if
questions. Yes.
I interrupt you and
Yes, please. Yeah.
we share a bit of the questions?
Absolutely. Please
And
go
then we
ahead.
can go back to the last two examples, maybe
Yeah.
if we have time.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Okay, I'm gonna switch over to the back to the presentation here. So I welcome everyone. If you have questions, please go to this website called slido.com, and you can use hashtag EEUM to jump right into the Q&A. You can also use your phone and use the QR code here to go there. So we have a few questions already. So first, kudos from Ben for amazing stats on how the community catalog has grown. His first question is, when do you think Stack might be available again?
Sometime before the end of the year. The idea was to actually make it available in summer, but the problem with this is honestly processing the vector data sets that have been tricky. With vector, finding the feature bounds is really, really hard for a complicated feature collection in Earth Engine. And as you all might be aware, that Earth Engine is really good with like with raster data sets, with vector data sets, it doesn't really do a great job of doing the processing can be lengthy. It can often like memory out or things like that. So long story short is that I have codes actually that I wrote that users can point to any Earth Engine object and will convert it into a stack. Like it can be any collection, any image, anything like that. But to do that for vectors is a really hard thing. And that's where the challenge actually lies. So my hope is still, usually traditionally the Geo for Good meeting happens in like October or something. And that's when I release like some new features or things like that. But I'm still aiming for around that time frame to release something. So hopefully I can release the stack metadata in that time. Yeah.
All right. And then related to that, I guess, is there a way for users to upvote dataset requests?
That's an interesting one because I was thinking about that on GitHub and I was like, I don't actually know, but I guess like you could go to the smiley face and basically click on the thumbs up. Like for any ticket that you wanted to, for any data set that you wanted to, you can go to any data set and basically click on that. I get to see every single thumbs up. So I do get a notification. I do get to see that. I don't know if GitHub directly has one, but I will say that there are discussion forums also where if you wanted a specific data sets and you're like, okay, this work is really stuck, it would be really helpful if there was any way to prioritize this. You can always go to the discussion and click on new discussion, and you can create a discussion about a ticket and say like, hey, I would love for us to basically, and by the way, my page is different from what your page will look like because I'm going to create a discussion category. So you should be able to create one and tag me or, just basically say that, hey, this would be really helpful. And then someone can upvote those ones. As far as I know, you can upvote a discussion if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So I think you can actually upvote a discussion. I can follow up on this. This is not a bad idea, and this is something that I've been thinking about as well. So hopefully there's a way. Yeah, apparently there is a way to upvote. So yeah, do that and tag me if needed. But feel free to also just click on a ticket and click on that emoji and just clicking thumbs up. I can see those numbers, and I'm tagged every time I get those.
Awesome. And then a final question, I guess, as a GDE, do we get advanced sites or an tag or heads up on what data sets are going to be added to the Google Earth Engine data catalog?
Are you talking about the Google Earth Engine main catalog, or are you
talking? I think this is the question.
Well, I do only because I speak to Simon almost every week. So I work with the team really closely as a GDE. So I will often get to talk to him and I ask him like, hey, what's new and upcoming? So once in a while, Simon will just tell me, oh, like, we're adding this new data sets, or, oh, we're making this available, or something like that. It's not always the case, and sometimes it's not always easy for you to even find that, even if you are looking at it. However, you can go to Google's own data catalog website, and basically Google maintains their own data catalog repository. And you can actually go and look at the changes, because as they're adding new metadata, you kind of can basically know what data set is going to be released within the next week or something. So it's a sneaky way for you to also look at their own collections, and you can do that.
And you can make requests and upvote those requests too to the main catalog.
Yes, you can actually request an upvote to the main catalog as well, but the main catalog goes through the issue structure, which is different from the way in which, and I think you can, yeah, issue tracker at google.com. Here you can basically see, let's see.
So I'm going to stop sharing so you can share, because it sounds like you're sharing. You'd like to show something, right?
Yes. Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought that I was still sharing. Yes.
Okay, over to you, Sam.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, so I was just going to show that there are ways for you to create basically like an issue. And I'm trying to remember right now where, okay, actually, if you just go to Earth Engine, and if I go to support, I believe there is a section, I found a bug, registration, additional coda, missing catalog asset.
It's a little bit up there. Request a new data set. It's in the
there
middle.
There you go. Thank you. Yeah, so there you go. Starts the new or existing data set request. So you can just click on the new one, or you go to the existing one. I'm just going to go to the existing one because that might be the useful one. They already have ways in which you can, and I feel like these ones are like bug reports rather than, yeah, I'm not 100% sure why these are all bug reports, but they seem like they're all bug. But there you go. There's a feature request right here. So this one is a feature request. For example, someone requested a new data set. They included some files and so on, and they'll send this link in. They'll oftentimes give an estimate of what the overall size is, you know, of these data sets. And then you can probably go in and just click on that +1. Vote I am impacted. So I don't know which one is better. I don't have a way for me to do something similar to Google's issue tracker. So I'm going to continue using GitHub as a way for people to upvote. But the discussions might be one of those things that I might start as a way to explore more interactivity with the end users. Users, by the way, users can submit pull requests as well. If you find like bugs or things like that that you want to improve, you found spelling mistakes, maybe a link to a paper has changed, a paper was in preprint and now it has been published to it, you know, and you want to change the citation, for example, feel free to submit a pull request, and I totally accept pull requests. Yeah.
Okay, I don't see any more questions, so I'll hand the time back over to you to finish your last two examples.
Yeah, this one is a, yeah, I'll be quick. This one is an interesting one. And again, I'm not cherry picking the ones to show you, hey, these are the ones that are problematic. Very rarely do I get tickets that are like so well fleshed out that I don't have to work really hard on something. But there are a few of those. This one is not one of them. This one, unfortunately, great paper. I actually read this paper yesterday. I went through it. I was like, okay, this is a fun little paper. I read the whole thing, and I'll show you an example of this, right? Where if I click on the PDF, I have gone through this entire section, and I couldn't find a location of where this data set is actually hosted. So there's no location information or things like that. There is no supplementary information. The supplementary information is just Excel sheets and things like that. The other thing I also noticed was they used some of the community catalog data sets. Unfortunately, they didn't reference us, which is fine. I don't really like, I'm not, you know, like upset or anything, but it would be nice if they could, because it allows the catalog to get more and more visibility in the scientific community, so then others can then utilize it as a feedback loop. But this is a good example because there is no data set link, right? And the person who submitted the request is the main author, is the first author of this paper who has submitted the data set. Again, not trying to single out people here, but it's one of those things where I was like, I don't have a way. And I said, can you send me a link to the data set? I don't see it listed anywhere in the paper. Is it available to download somewhere? So once in a while, I will get requests like this where someone points to a very nice, amazing paper, but there's no way for me to get to it. And finally, just to show you an example of like, okay, this is a data set where it's just been done so beautifully that I don't have to work really hard. I'm trying to remember now. Someone actually just submitted the Rural Access Index. Yes, this was submitted a few days ago. This is an example of like a beautifully written ticket. And I'll tell you why. Two reasons. One is, look at how detailed the dataset description is. There's like figures and diagrams and details. And the best part is they added the dataset to Earth Engine already. So I don't have to work that hard. Like I said earlier, usually I don't copy a collection or a data set over to my catalog unless a user requested. Once in a while, I'll do that because the naming convention is inconsistent, or they'll just have like projects, username, and then assets, and then something else. And they are in some weird structure that I'm not really a big fan of. I want to bring them all together in a single folder. So I will often go ahead and copy these over. These ones are not as large, so I can basically copy them over quite easily if I wanted to. But this is a great example. Like everything is fleshed out, keywords, license information, everything is fleshed out. So this one will probably take me about 5 to 10 minutes to actually get this done and get it out in the world, So I'm not saying you all have to be that fleshed out in terms of like the tickets, but this is an example of a good example. Most of the times, the tickets come through different people submitting different data sets. And I really appreciate people submitting these data sets, right? Like people have to spend time out of the day creating a GitHub ticket. They will often include the paper name, they'll include the Zenodo link, and they'll include the license. That is oftentimes more than enough for me to go and say like, okay, where is the data set at? How is the data set created? So for example, this is a good example of like, hey, 30-meter wetland data set. They're all TIFF files. Okay, it's not going to be that easy, but it's also not going to be that hard. And when I say it's not going to be that easy, is because I still have to download this data set, add it to a collection, do some pre-processing to make this available. But that's how the process actually works. And the final thing I wanted to show, this is a repo that you don't see because this is a private repo, is there's a repo called Catalog Scripts. This is where I have these hundreds and hundreds of Python files, you'll notice, for different types of data set all over. So this is where like I will basically go in and like write code. It's not very clean. And I'll be very honest, it's not very clean. So it's not really structured in any specific way. I try my best to sometimes group them, sometimes add them in a specific way. So for example, the Impact Observatory LULC, I now have like fresh data, EE-diff to basically look at the difference data, and IO epoch to basically fix the dates and things like that. So I try to do this sometimes, but it's not always possible. Again, one person doing all of it, so it gets complicated in terms of prioritization. And also, I have to do this usually in the evenings or weekends or things like that. So with that, I'm just gonna stop sharing. But yeah, that's the story on how it gets made, how it's all done in the backend. In terms of like from the journey of how a request comes in, how I go in and process it. I do use machines. By the way, you remember the run that I was running? It basically finished ingesting, and it basically went through, because the USDM is then converted from a vector to a raster. It also then went through and checked that, hey, what are the data sets that are already available? And then it basically started an export job to convert this to a raster data set to this collection. And there you go. And I don't know if this is finished or not, but once it does finish, it'll be made available directly in the catalog. So I don't have to worry about doing a changelog update there. So yeah, okay, I'm going to stop sharing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sam.
Yep.
So I guess a question for you, it sounds like you could use with a few pair of extra hands, right? Hunting down license information, data sets. Do you have volunteers on your team, and how can people like join you in this awesome effort?
I do get volunteers in the sense that someone will go once in a while. They're rare, but once in a while I'll have someone who will basically write like a pull request and basically say like, hey, we have gone in and we found that these pieces have been outdated. Or someone reaches out to me and has like this additional information about a data set that I didn't include initially, that's a good way for people to do that as well. The idea is people can interact with the community catalog in a couple of ways. They can either help me by saying like, hey, can people tag me? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go process this data set and bring the processed version back to you, Sam, or things like that. They can do that. Now it's an undertaking. I will be very honest. I process terabytes of data like every week, and it's an undertaking for people to do that. Like using different methodologies. But if someone wants to do that and someone has the compute resources to do that, please feel free to just look at a ticket tag and basically say like, Sam, can you assign this to me? And basically what I can do is I can tag that person and say like, hey, this person is helping me on this ticket. They're going to go source the data. They're going to download it. They're going to stitch it together into a single raster and convert it into a cloud optimized GeoTIFF or whatever be it, or once in a while, I'll get this request about HDF5 files. I hate those. If someone wants to help me with those, feel free to convert those from HDF5 to GeoTIFF, because Earth Engine cannot accept anything except TIFF files. So that's one way. The pull requests are a standard way as well. So I really appreciate the pull request if people want to make that. And here's the best part. Every time you make a pull request, your name goes into the citation for that release. Which means that let's say that you made a pull request and I cut a release the next month. Usually it's monthly, but I haven't been able to make one this month. The moment that name comes in, your name as an author goes into the actual citation for that release, which is nice, right? Because you are contributing to the catalog, so your name should be included in the citation itself.
Awesome. So it looks like there are ways that people can get in touch and get active supporting your work.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So once again, a huge thank you for taking the time to show us this behind the scenes look at how you do things. It's clearly challenging and not easy. And thank you so much for the dedication and hours you have spent, the brain power figuring things out.
Yeah, and I'm happy to be part of it. Yeah, and if people do want to reach out to me, I'm no longer an active user at Twitter anymore. So just reach out on LinkedIn. It's a better way for you to just reach out to me. Twitter is more complicated now since whatever,
Gotcha. Yeah, so thanks again, everyone, for joining in. And I hope you'll have a good rest of the day wherever you are. And join us again in September for our next meetup. So thanks again and goodbye, everyone.
Thanks for listening. Take care.
Take care.